Now I would like to turn to Ranking Member Cole for his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Before I go to my prepared remarks, my staff brought something to my attention this morning that I wanted to share with the committee, which was an article in the Hill magazine reporting on the Lugar Center, a very respected center, which rated all the committees in Congress for their quality of oversight. So they gave them an A to an F grade. I want to read the following. The best performing, there we did. The best performing committee was the House Committee on Appropriations, chaired by Representative Rosa DeLauro, Democrat, Connecticut. According to the Lugar Center's formula, the panel received a score of 184%, was followed by the Senate Finance, led by Senator Ron Wyden, with a score of 136. So you didn't beat them by a little, you beat them by a lot. And I just want to compliment you and your leadership and frankly all of my fellow committee members. We may not always agree on everything, but I'm very proud of this committee and the way in which it operates and the willingness of members to spend the time and do the job under your leadership and under the leadership of our ranking members. So I just think it speaks well of us, and wanted to get that in on the record.
Well, I just want to say that it wasn't, it's not under my leadership, but it's all of us together have gotten that great score. So thank you all very, very much.
Bet.
And those are my friends who are on the screen as well. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Madam Chair. I want to congratulate you on your hard work on this chairwoman's mark. And I want to, first of all, thank you for the series of truly excellent hearings and briefings held this year. I think the topics we covered, the briefings held for members, and the witnesses we heard from added great value to our deliberations and ultimately to the bill. And again, I want to thank you for that. I also want to thank you for incorporating so many of our shared priorities into this bill. You and I agree on the need for continued investment in biomedical research, public health infrastructure, and preparing the nation for the next pandemic. In fact, as I said in the NIH hearing earlier this year, I actually support the President's higher request for NIH, and I hope we can work together to achieve his recommended level. You and I also agree on the importance of funding special education and programs like TRIO and Gear Up, which help first-generation students complete college and change the trajectory of their lives. Thank you for recognizing the importance of these shared priorities. You've also been fair in including community project funding requested by members on both sides of the aisle. Bringing some control of this funding back into the hands of elected representatives is not without its challenges this year. But you've been more than fair in accommodating to both sides, and I want to thank you for your leadership in that regard. Despite these many areas of agreement, however, I'll be opposing the bill presented today. At the end of May, President Biden sent a $6 trillion budget request to Congress for the fiscal year 2022. The bill presented today mirrors that request closely. Proposing the highest spending levels since World War II, the price tag alone is utterly unrealistic. And while Congress holds the purse strings and is ultimately responsible for providing annual funding for the federal government, the President's budget request reveals his radical priorities and his total disregard for fiscal responsibility. First, instead of focusing on urgent priorities for all Americans, President Biden's budget request elevates controversial policies over pressing needs like strengthening our national defense and bolstering tools to address and manage the crisis at our southern border. In fact, his budget calls for billions of dollars to fund progressive policies like Medicare for All, the Green New Deal, and those outlined in his so-called American Jobs Plan and American Families Plan, while recommending an effective cut in the funding for our military. With China and Russia growing their militaries by the day, such a move is deeply misguided. Beyond shortchanging our defense and spending big on progressive policies, President Biden expects the American people to foot the bill. His budget proposes a $55 trillion tax increase on American individuals and businesses over the next decade. Moreover, the President endorsed raising the corporate income tax and other taxes targeting individuals, small businesses, and our independent energy industries. Despite promises made on the campaign trail not to raise taxes on those with low and middle income, the President's budget would allow existing tax cuts to expire which would immediately increase the tax burden on hardworking Americans. As individuals, families, and small businesses continue to recover from the coronavirus pandemic, such levels of unprecedented spending and taxation would only lead to inflation, slowed economic growth, and the highest national debt level in American history. Finally, most egregious in the President's budget request, which I was very disappointed to see also reflected in this bill presented today, is the removal of the Hyde Amendment, which protects life and prevents federal taxpayer-funded abortions. Since it was enacted in 1976, it's estimated that this provision has saved more than 2 million lives while protecting the conscience rights of the great majority of Americans who are opposed to publicly funded abortions for religious, moral, or fiscal reasons. Even when President Biden was serving in the United States Senate, he then expressed his support for inclusion of the Hyde Amendment in appropriations bills and showed support for the provision as recently as just 2 years ago while campaigning for president. Moreover, it's been supported by lawmakers, including every member sitting in this room today, and signed into law by presidents of both parties every year as part of the appropriations process. Madam Chair, you know the Democrats in Congress do not have the majorities capable of passing this bill on their own. In the days and weeks ahead, it's my hope that members on both sides of the aisle and in both chambers can negotiate spending that is reasonable and will not lead to financial disaster. But the first step toward that negotiation will be a full reinstatement of the Hyde Amendment, including conscience protection language added 16 years ago that was also removed from this bill, which protects American doctors, nurses, and other health care professionals from participating in an abortion if they have a moral objection. This is an essential right of every American, and its removal is a danger to us all. I want to point out that even President Biden's budget did not propose removal of that important language, first authored by then Representative David Weldon in 2005. These protections need to be reinstated for this bill to move forward. Quite frankly, everyone in this room knows this bill will never pass the United States Senate without their inclusion, and the majority of the American people support that inclusion. In closing, while the bill does fund many good things, and while I certainly appreciate the openness of the process in which the gentlelady and chairwoman has approached the development of her mark, I'll be opposing the bill today. The price tag is too high, and the bill contains many poison pill policy riders, funding for unauthorized program, and bows to a leftist agenda that's out of step with the American people. But even if all these issues were addressed today, the removal of the language that protects the lives of unborn American children and the rights of Americans to freely exercise their conscience assures the bill will never see the President's desk as written. This decades-old bipartisan compromise must be included before we negotiate on the spending levels and other policy provisions. It's just that simple. I want to thank the chairwoman and her staff again for all the hard work, and I pledge to work with you in good faith as the year continues. We've been at this point before where we disagreed at the beginning, and 6 times we've managed to get to the same place in the end. 4 when I was chairman, 2 when you were just chairman of the subcommittee. So we know how to work together. I would just say I remember in one of our sessions, Madam Chair, when we were dealing with our colleagues on the other side of the rotunda, I was pressing a pretty contentious issue, and one of our friends said to me, Tom, you can have a deal or you can have a fight, but you can't have both. And I think that's where we are. We can have a deal. We know how to do a deal. In my opinion, a deal would mean the defense number would need to go higher, the domestic number would need to go lower, and obviously Hyde needs to come back in. The alternative is a fight, and a fight means a continuing resolution, and that would mean we would end up passing the budget of the last president and the last Congress instead of working together to find common ground. So I pledge to you, my commitment to you as our chairwoman and certainly as my friend and someone I admire, is to try and work with you every step of the way and hope we can reach a deal. And with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.